Hey guys, welcome back to Maelstrom Game Studios. I'm Craig, and today we are going to talk about my first tournament of 10th edition that just happened on Saturday here. I brought a list. If you watched the live stream on Friday, we kind of crafted this list, brought some stuff. I didn't know it was going to be the most competitive. I haven't played a ton of games of 10th edition because I have been very busy. So now I'm finally getting into playing more and more games of 10th edition, slowly but surely. Happy to play more, but I'm still learning, just like all of us, still learning to see what is the best and not. So we're going to dive into everything that I learned from this tournament, as well as how my list did, what I thought were some pros, cons, key concepts to take away, and yeah, we'll just discuss it. Before we dive in, just want to thank our members. If you want to join, link in the description down below. Members get access to special things, videos, sometimes, battle report, specialties, Discord, all of those things. And yeah, so like and subscribe, all of that. Let's dive into today's video. So this was my first tournament of 10th edition. I've barely played games as it is, so I'm still learning, you know, what's the best way units to take in terms of scoring the secondaries, what's the best way to play the primary. You know, there's still a lot to be learning from my end as well as all of our ends, and still very early in the edition. So I brought this list. It consisted of a Neuro Tyrant, Old One Eye, a unit of Hormagaunts and Termagants. These were just mainly for screening, maybe holding a back objective, something like that. We had 2 individual Biovores, 2 groups of 6 Leapers. I loved the Leapers and I really wanted to try them out, so we brought 6 of them for fun. 1 unit of 22 Neurogaunts, 2 Carnifexes with the Quad Devourers. We had an Exocrine, unit of 6 Zoanthropes, which I stuck in a Tyrannocyte, 2 units of 5 Barbgaunts, and the Scythe Hierodual. So the first game was rough. It was versus Chaos Knights, and this was probably my worst showing ever in a tournament since I started playing competitive years ago. Big old 92-33 loss. He had 2 big knights and 9 little knights. At least I'm pretty sure that's what it was. At least my list, and I mean, we know a lot of Tyranids, they just don't have enough to compete with that level of armor and firepower that the Chaos Knights spit out. The Knights went first and just started obliterating everything they could get in range of, which was most of it, because we're playing an 18-inch no man's land, so that didn't help either. I lost so much on the first turn. So many things got obliterated on the first turn. It was kind of sad. The new stratagem Tank Shock is insane on Knights, and I don't know. Something about Chaos Knights being able to roll 14 dice, and on a 5 or 6 they do a Mortal Wound for 1 CP. Cap of 6 obviously, but still seems a bit bonkers on Chaos Knights. By the time it got to my turn 3, I had my 2 Biovores and a single Zoanthrope left on the table. That was it. I had killed, you know, 3 or 4 of the baby knights. I did some wounds to the big knight, but I just had nothing. I had nothing left. The only reason I scored points, 10 of those points were painted points, and most of the other ones were from the Biovores doing behind me lines, just spitting out Spore Mines sitting back there. Honestly, and it's not against my opponent, it's just the nature of it. It was not a fun game. It was just me getting obliterated left and right. Nothing fun about that. Yeah, that's all I can say, is that Chaos Knights was not fun to play against. And gonna have to work on adding some more anti-tank, but I don't know what is enough anti-tank against our army of knights like that. Game 2 was much more fun. Much more fun. Yes, it helped that I did win 72-55, but it went back and forth there for a while. This Grey Knight list that I played against was crazy. He had 3 blocks of Paladins, 1 10-man, 2 5-man, group of Terminators, a group of Purifiers, character in every unit. Paladins are insanely tough with their pseudo-transhuman stuff. Voldus makes them one unit also -1 to hit. So one of these big units was essentially -1 to hit and wound, which for Carnifexes like Old One-Eye, who tried to go face to face with it, really struggled, especially after the 2 Carnifexes died and then he didn't get to reroll his hits. He was hitting on 4s and wounding on 3s instead of 2s. And then a 4-pin, it was tough. It was tough for him. Their teleporting shenanigans and their teleporting stratagems and their you can only shoot if you're within 12 strats are all very scary. Very powerful tools the Grey Knights have. But like Tyranids in many regards, they too lack the anti-tank or anti-heavy firepower. Their side cannons are fine, but they don't have a high enough strength. They don't have enough shots to be reliably consistent. He had a lot of them in the army, and really he struggled to deal with it. My side hero duel did make decent work of some of the paladins, exploding flamers and launching up a few of them. It was good. But yes, Grey Knights do suffer in the same way that they are they suffer in a different way, where their numbers are few and they're durable, but they don't have the hitting power. Tyranids, our numbers are many, we're not durable, and we don't have the hitting power. At least that's what I'm seeing so far. Well, like I said, it was a fun game with all the shenanigans we're pulling off on each other. Great opponent. Not that my last guy wasn't a bad opponent or anything, but it was just, it was a good game, and it went all the way to turn 5, going back and forth to the wire. So what I learned out of that one, Paladins are terrifying, and my tier list seemed okay against this sort of list. And then we're going to get into game 3 versus the Dreucari, which was again another miserable loss, probably the second worst showing I've had in any tournament. It was 35-84, a big L in my favor. Dreucari did go first, which didn't help because he had a ton of anti-tank firepower. So I was really behind the 8 ball early off the start. They just have so much shooting. They have so much shooting they can get for cheap. I think one of their Ravengers, he said, was 95 points for the 3 Dark Lances, which have a high strength. And they have great damage. They are only 1 shot, but a Ravager gets 3 of them. They have pain tokens, which you can just give to the Ravengers, so they get full rerolls to hit, making those things really reliable at dropping big vehicles and big monsters, like I had. So that was terrifying. I honestly didn't think things were going that bad in my favor, and there were 2 rolls that just sent the game spiraling out of control for me. So for one, he had this big nasty Tantalith, and I had done a ton of damage in shooting and with my Zoanthropes and my Exocrine, and it had 2 wounds left. So I charged in my 10 Hormagaunts in there, and with my lethal hits on 6s to hit, it only has a 3-up save base, so 4-up save base. Hormagaunts run in there. I do 6 wounds, and he had to make or fail 2 5-ups. That's all he had to fail. He made 5 out of 6 of them. That thing lived, and that thing living just allowed it to shoot another turn, allowed everything else to just keep going an extra turn, which sucked. And then you have Rax going after my Zoanthropes, and I caught him in an Overwatch with my Scythe Hero Duel. That Scythe Hero Duel is amazing at Overwatching. 3d6 shots at strength 6, AP -2, damage 1. Very tasty. I rolled a massive 15 on my 3d6. Rolling to wound, I had 13 wounds there. He had 4 Feel No Pain on the guys. 12 out of 13 4 Feel No Pains. Just took my chance. I thought, okay, a few of them get into combat, whatever. The whole unit basically got into combat, and that sucked. That sucked big time. Just like the Knights game, it was my turn 3. I had 5 models left. 2 Neurogaunts, my Neuro Tyrant, a Leaper, and a Biovore is all I had left by the time I started my turn 3, and I went second. So it's just so lethal. Even though everything's supposed to be less lethal, I feel like things are just getting absolutely chewed to pieces here. And that's probably part of it's my list, but still, it seems lethal. It was a much more fun game than against the Knights. I felt like I actually had some interaction. I did kill things of my opponents, even though I didn't kill as much as I wanted to. I was scoring, at least it felt like I was scoring points. But it's just, it's so shooty. Everything's so shooty, and Tyranids aren't as shooty as I want them to be, or Melee's not as good as I want them to be. So, big loss there. Really sad when I realized the score was only 35 to 84. So, that there. How did I actually think the list did? Well, the Neuro Tyrant was one of my... He did okay. I wanted to study him a bit, see how he performed. He did all right. He did some wounds to a Knight. He did some wounds to some Grey Knights. He did some wounds to some Eldar. Dark Eldar, technically, which is fine. He did fine. His little synapse, giving things synapse for the command phase. Not as important as I was thinking it was going to be. His Shadow in the Warp ability, the -1 though, I actually will say Shadow in the Warp came up a lot in this game. It gave me extra or denied points against the Knights game. It denied key stratagems to be used in the Grey Knights game. And it kept me scoring extra primary and denying him key stratagems in the Dark Eldar game. So actually, even though Shadow in the Warp was once a game, it was felt in the game when it came up. Not enough to change anything in the long run, but it was felt. Maybe it changed stuff in the Grey Knight game. So that's the only thing, that extra -1, +1, whatever you want to say, for the Shadow in the Warp was good. Old One Eye, I still give him a B+, but he did not get into combat at all, except for the Grey Knight game, and even then he struggled. It's just, your opponent knows that, hey, this is the only thing that can kill vehicles reliably. I'm going to focus fire everything into his unit, and no matter what you do with Feel No Pain or cover saves or anything, you just can't make enough saves, at least what I went up against, which was a sheer amount of anti-tank firepower. They just gun him down. So that sucks, but I still give him the B+ because they're re-rolling when those Devourers got to shoot. I mean, I chunked like 4 wounds off of a Knight with the Devourers, and I butchered a bunch of Dark Eldar with them. I couldn't get them up fast enough for Old One Eye to get into combat, which sucks, but it is what it is. I still think he's good there. The Termagants did what they needed to. They screened out reserves, or deep striking potential, which is what they were there for. They held some objectives. I think they did like an action or whatever. I can't complain with them. I didn't pay a ton of points for them. They did what I wanted them to, so, they're fine. The 2 Biovores, for as long as GW is keeping this real active, Spore Mines being able to score secondary points is dumb, but it's the only reason Tyranids are scoring a lot of points, I think, or at least the vast majority. It's a bit of a crutch we have. They scored a lot of my points in the tournament, a lot of them, so I give them there. The Leapers, I give them fat C. These things just did not hit as hard as I wanted them to. Now, part of it that didn't help was in the Grey Knight game, when I got to go first for once, my opponent made a mistake and thought his transhuman was a permanent -1 to wounds, so I was wounding everything on 5s instead of 4s, which shaved off a lot of wounds. So that was a mistake. The time they actually got to do their alpha striking. Then against Knights went first, gunned a bunch of them down. Leapers aren't going to do much to Knights in melee. And then against Dreucari, I went second. They have so much speed that they could get to the sides of my infiltrators and just start mowing them down. When the Leapers did get into melee, they did kill stuff. But it was just, you infiltrate them up and you're kind of crossing your fingers that you get to go first and then alpha strike with them. I think a unit of 3 of them can still be good in a lot of armies, or maybe 2 units of 3, but they're not what I want them to be right now for a unit of 6 to be useful. If this was a very infantry meta, I think they'd be good, but with all the vehicles, they just struggle too much. Neurogons, I give them a big B-. I thought these guys would be much more useful, giving off synapse to my army, and they were in that regard. But again, something gets into range of them, and they just start dropping like flies. They didn't really provide much. Some screening, yes. Then again, I only paid 90 points for them. So maybe it's a little harsh on that scoring. I don't know. I didn't hate them, but they didn't do, I guess they didn't do me as much as I was hoping. The quad devourers, like I said, I still think these guys did really well. Yes, when they hit melee, they do absolutely nothing, but all of that firepower does add up to no matter what target they're shooting at. So I'm really happy with the Carnifexes. Not the most insane, like, wow, look how good they did, but out of all of my armies, they did do a decent amount. Exocrine, love the Exocrine, can't complain. He did damage in every single game. Showed his fragility against the Dark Eldar game. He got a few Dark Lances into range, and that thing just dropped. So unfortunate there, but still, when he does hit pretty nice. So good there. Zoanthropes, give him the A-. Yes, the Tyrannocyte was a bit of a transport dropping, but they killed what they shot at for the most part. Against the Knight game, I got a little greedy and split fired, and I dropped 2 Knights down to 1 wound with each of them, 2 baby Knights. So it was easier kills for the rest of the stuff, but so good there. Against the Grey Knight player, they didn't do a ton, but they did do the damage they needed to do. And against the Dark Eldar player, they did a lot of damage. Probably the more underwhelming game from them was the Dark Eldar game. They didn't do as much as I was hoping, but they still did some good damage. Barbgons, I actually really like these. They didn't do much against the Knights, that's for sure, but they sat on some objectives and moved around the board. Every other game, the Grey Knight one, they actually did do substantial amount of damage because big blocks, they really lay down the firepower, and they did do a lot of good damage against the Dark Eldar playing it. Whenever an infantry squad popped out, they obliterated them. So happy with the Barbgons. And the Scythe Hero Duel, I really wanted this to be a good pick. I really thought this would be good. Against the Knight player, he focused every single anti-tank weapon he could into him. Unfortunately, he did drop finally. And in Grey Knights, he did great. He did great. I can't complain about him there. And in Dark Eldar, same thing happened. Focused every single Dark Lance they could into him, and he did some damage. He killed a Raider, he killed some A-Rack, he killed a few other things, but just not nearly as much as his points was worth. Never got him to fight in melee except for killing a Raider. And some Grey Knights. So yeah, that's kind of how the list went. I got a couple conclusions here. First one, I hate playing against Knights right now, and I think a lot of people agree with that, but that was probably felt like the most imbalanced matchup in 40k I've participated in since Tyranids versus Dark Eldar in 5th edition. That was a disgusting time to be playing Tyranids. Dark Eldar was like the easy button to killing them, and this kind of felt like it a lot then. It's just in a way 10th edition is wrapping out is a vehicle heavy meta, a shooting heavy meta. You have an army of a shooting vehicle. They're gonna be good, and we know that they're gonna be really good, and GW did give them a huge points increase. I don't think that's enough. I don't know what to say of what they need, but they did a lot of damage. They are very good. Tank shock is a nasty stratagem for for them. They just doing like 3, 4, 5, 6 mortal wounds on the charge is nasty stuff. And then they get to swing with all their nasty attacks, and they have high AP on their stuff. So yeah, it hurts. 10th edition is not 9th edition. That's another big thing that I gotta wake up to. It is, I know I tried a hard reset, but in my mind I want to play Tyranids, certain ways, and it's hard to adapt a little bit at first, but this edition is just way more different than I thought it was. It's going to be very shooty unless there are some changes made. You're going to want to tech into just playing pure objective or shooty. I don't think pure melee is going to work out for a lot of armies in 40k, 10th edition at least. So, I mean, you're going to need some melee, but it's just, the melee is just not as lethal. You don't need to trade objectives as much as you need to. I kind of learned that trading on objectives wasn't the end-all be-all in the game. So You don't need those heavy melee units to sit and trade back and forth. You just gotta, hold your objectives, take some objectives, shoot your opponent off objectives more than anything. So that I do like the tactical option. I did play with that just to have some experience with it, and I did like it. So that is fun. And it does kind of feel like whoever goes first has a very significant shot at winning. Kind of back to the way it was at the beginning of 8th edition. We'll see. I talked to some people at the tournament. I don't know what the final stats were, but it seemed like a significant percentage of players who went first won. And that's what happened in my games. Whoever went first won. So that is some things to keep in mind. Now for more Tyranid specific conclusions, the Tyranid rules need some help, and I know we've got our codex coming very soon. We've got a whole bunch of new models coming soon. Hopefully that gives us the help we need, but there's some stuff. Compared to all the other armies I've been playing against, our strats are just not amazing. And I know you're just supposed to be using them very limited. You only have so many CP, but they're not great. They in theory look like they could be good, but they're not there. Maybe I'm missing something with them, but really the strats aren't anything special that give us a huge boost. So that's unfortunate. I do like our special rules, but they're not good. Synapse being 6 inches is just not useful. We have less synapse in the army. 2 of our characters lost synapse. We don't have and some of our cheaper synapse units are garbage. So you bring like your HQ maybe, and that's your synapse creature. You have your zoanthropes. The 3d6 is good and it helps with battle shock, but 6 inches is just, it's not good. It needs to be 9 inches, I think, to make it somewhat useful. The adaptations are fun. I do like that for our detachment, but sustains hits versus infantry seems to be the only one that does substantial damage. Yes, the lethal hits make it from doing no damage to vehicles to a little bit of damage to vehicles, but it's just not, it's not enough in a vehicle heavy meta. And also obviously the precision one, not really useful at all. So that's unfortunately that's how it is right now. Shadow in the Warp is good. I do like Shadow in the Warp. However, it being only one time a game is not enough to do anything. It turns into more gimmick. We've talked about this on the members, or with the members in the Discord a lot, but if it was 2, 3, 4, 5 times a game, like every turn it happened, but make it so it's not as likely. So maybe like turn 1, they get a +1 to it. Turn 2, it's neutral. Turn 3 and onward, they have penalties to it. Then you'd start to see some significant impacts through that. But because it's not, you can't control it, like, Eldar can control their 6s in a way. You can't control it, it's not as effective. So that's kind of I like it, but it's just not effective enough. And then I still say, all hope, I know I'm sounding a little bit doom and gloom in this, all hope is not at all lost for the Tyranids. We have plenty of data sheets to work with in this codex. It's just a matter of finding what works well in the meta. I think gargoyles are going to be good. I do like the barb gaunts. I think our biggest question mark right now is sort of the HQs, because while the tyrants are okay, I don't know if they're worth their points. All of our little HQs aren't all that good. Honestly, I can see a lot of lists bringing just a synapse enhanced parasite and calling it good there. It's just some of our HQs are really expensive and we don't get a lot out of them, especially in the durability line. So tough there, but not doom and gloom. We're gonna get a codex soon. Maybe they're just waiting. We're gonna get a bunch of new units. Maybe that'll help bring us up. I just, with some of the cases right now, we're just missing some things. Some things need to be cheaper. We've all talked about the Screamer Killer is not worth 180 points. You cannot tell me that one Screamer Killer is worth the same price as 2 Ravengers from the Dark Eldar. Screamers need to be somewhere in the 150 range to even be considered for me in a truly competitive state. They're still fun to play with, but in a truly competitive state, I don't like the Screamers at that point. Even the Psychophage, I think, should be like 15 points cheaper. Just because Tyranids seem to be playing a more swarmy meta, and we can't swarm because our monsters are expensive or our support units are expensive. GW will keep tweaking the game. They have said that we're going to constantly keep tweaking it and fine-tune it. Yes, I think 9th edition was in a decent state when it ended, and there were its problems, but there are a lot of good, and they spent a long time tweaking that. So hopefully, because COVID is gone and that caused delays to 9th, they can fine-tune this pretty quick within in the first couple of months and get this to a place where it's pretty good. But sentiment at the tournament when I was there is a lot of people are not too thrilled at 10th right now. I'll let that sit and just kind of keep playing and seeing how things go. Let GW do their thing, and we'll learn from that. But yeah, don't worry about Tyranids. All you new Tyranid players, don't worry. There's still hope. We're gonna figure it out. I'm going to especially try and figure this out because that's what I'm doing here. I'm playing the Tyranids, and we're going to have fun doing it. Final thing before we go is I'm going to show you the front cam. This is coming in to be the new studio setup. The lighting is not finalized, but I added some shelves, and I'm curious to what you guys think in the final bit. Should I add 2 more shelves here, same kind, to the left and right, obviously, of each of them? So it would be 2 shelves on the left, 2 shelves on the right, and then in the middle we're going to have a big logo. Whether it to be color or not color, don't know yet, but that's sort of what we're thinking. Let me know in the comments also, besides anything about Tyranids, what do you think? Should I have 4 shelves, or is 2 fine? And then for the logo, do you think it should be colored or more of a black brown and then just the back wall color? Again, this isn't set up, but I'm hoping to have it set up by the next time we record our next battle report next week. So, with that all the way, thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you got some information out of it. Again, Hive Mind will adapt. We will get through a little bit of what seems to be a bit of a rough spot. Don't worry. We'll do it. We're just paying for our sins of being brokenly overpowered at the beginning of Tyranid 9th edition. So, that's what we got. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, members, and we'll catch you next time here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios.